Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you know, it's Monday, which means today is Modern Monday, and we have one of the spiciest modern lists I've seen in a long time to look at today. This is Mono White Devotion. Recently took a Magic League user by the name of DS Shitty to a first place finish in a Magic League trial, so big congrats to DS on their finish with the deck. A quick reminder before we break it all down: if you enjoy this deck and you want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. So this deck, Mono White Devotion, is built around Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. In fact, as crazy as it sounds, this deck, which has creatures in it that cost as much as 10 mana, is only playing 17 lands. 4 Nykthos, 13 planes, that's the entire mana base. So the deck is leaning really heavily on Nykthos, gets a bunch of white mana symbols on the table early in the game. Hopefully it taps for 5 mana, 7 mana, 10 mana in the late game, and all by itself, well, with the help of 2 other lands to make the 2 mana you need to activate it, but almost all by itself, it's able to cast really huge things if you can get enough white mana symbols on the battlefield. It's also true that the 17 land thing is a little deceiving because the deck is playing 8 Boarderposts. So these are weird ramp artifacts. The way to look at these essentially is like lands that have white mana symbols. That's the basic theory of this, because they cost you your land drop. You gotta pick up a basic land to be able to put them onto the battlefield. So it basically counts as your land drop for the turn, but it's a white source that also has a white mana symbol to generate mana for Nykthos. So it's a really sweet idea. So what is the deck using to pump up Nykthos beyond the Boarderposts? Well, the deck has a lot of one-ofs, but it has a few creatures that it's playing in multiple. So Knight of the White Orchid is a key one. Also helps the deck cheat on lands because it can get a plains out of your deck, but 2 white mana symbols on your 2-drop. Boros Reckoner, great at holding down the ground, 3 white mana symbols. And then Archangel of Tithe, 4 white mana symbols. Also disrupts your opponent, makes it kind of hard for them to attack or block depending on whether it's untapped or tapped, and it's a reasonable flying body. So these are the big devotion generating creatures. Then the deck has 4 Thalia's Lancers, and this is what the rest of the deck is built around. So the deck plays Thalia's Lancers not just because it has the white mana symbols, but it allows the deck to play a ton of one-ofs that it can tutor up. So it has a bunch of different legendary cards that you can find. Of course, Thalia's Lancers allows you to find your Nykthos, which is really sweet. That's probably your first target if you don't have a Nykthos, because Nykthos is legendary. And then you can find Brimaz is a good ground blocker, can kind of make some tokens. Linvala, great against aggro decks, lets you gain some life, maybe get an angel token. And Alishnorn just locks little creatures out of the game. Also works like a finisher because it pumps up all your random early game plays by +2/+2, so a couple of swings you should finish off your opponent. But that's not all. You can get a Gisela or a Bruna, or maybe a Bruna to get back a Gisela, meld them around into Bracella. It sounds like a bad standard deck, but this actually won a modern tournament. And then a Sky Sovereign, some removal, a big flyer, and an Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger in our 17 land mono white deck in modern. Search that up. That's kind of the ultimate finisher in this deck. And then the deck also has Planeswalkers. You can't technically search them up with Thalia's Lancers, but they are huge and hard to deal with. Elspeth clogs up the ground, eventually will win you the game, can also kill big creatures, and Karn, super hard to deal with, especially if you can kind of ramp into it with Nykthos and Boarderposts and cast it on turn 5 maybe instead of turn 7. The rest of the main deck is enchantment based, which is really cool. So instead of playing Path to Exile and other spells as removal, this deck is really focused on the devotion aspect. So it's using enchantments which have white mana symbols while they're sitting on the battlefield. So Journey to Nowhere, Oblivion Ring, sort of the Path to Exile of this deck, but they give you a white mana symbol towards Nykthos. Mastery of the Unseen, this was an old standard trick, but if you can get a ton of mana from Nykthos, you can make a ton of manifest cards with your Mastery of the Unseen, gain some life, clog up the ground. And then Leyline combos with Nykthos really well because you can start with it on the battlefield. If you have a couple of Leylines in your opening hand, that's 2 or 4 white mana symbols starting on the battlefield, which means if on turn 3 you have 2 planes and a Nykthos, you're already ready to start generating extra mana with your Nykthos and playing your big things. The sideboard is more removal, basically. So we get Path to Exiles, Blessed Alliance, great against Infect, Quarantine Field, Wrath of Gods. Quarantine Field is actually pretty sweet if you have a ton of mana. You can exile a whole bunch of things. Rest in Peace, Story Circle, Nevermore. Some hateful enchantments. Again, having enchantments on the battlefield with white mana symbols pumps up Nykthos and provides some really interesting answers to combo. Story Circle on red stops Conflagrate, for example, against Dredge. Nevermore can name Ad Nauseam, for example. These cards, apart from Rest in Peace, which is mostly for Dredge, but also maybe Tarmogoyf decks, Snapcaster decks, Story Circle and Nevermore basically give this mono-white deck, along with Leyline of Sanctity, ways to fight against combo decks. And then a single Iona, Shield of Emeria, the only creature in the sideboard, and that is mono-white devotion for Modern, and that's been our Instant Deck Tech for today. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon.